Uganda. Fellow Ugandans, cause of environment, environment of Uganda. Fellow Uganda. Fellow Ugandans, cause of environment, environment.
Makerere jungle like me, you just say I'm Makerere jungle, and then we will get on. So I am Steve. I'm not in Sita, and I think I know many people in this room and maybe in fashion, if you will cooperate. Let's start.
Environment, and Makerere jungle.
I work with the Uganda Wildlife Authority, but again I'm the treasurer of AUPWAE.
I work with forestry research.
I'm Sentinel Dan. I do computer support in this school.
My name is Grace Okiro. I work with AUPWAE, Association of Uganda Professional Women in Agriculture and Environment.
I'm Grace Agidaba. I work with NAFORI. I'm Irene Daniel. I work with FSSD as a forest officer.
I'm consultant officer working with the same organization.
Professional management, you know, the methodology. And when she's done that, there will be a little bit of discussion, I can see there. Then we'll have break tea. Okay, there is nothing so far. I think we are still getting time.
The dean who is away has problems in phone covered, and the head of department of the School of Forestry, Environment and Development Science is supposed to come a bit. They have been very good partners for almost 5-6 years. And this is an area project which we haven't done much, is research and development. So we haven't only done research and walked away, but we have done research and worked in those communities where we have been for almost 5-6 years. And that's why you see members of Ugandan here, because they have been part of our family for almost 6 years, and we have quite learned a lot from them, and I think they have also learned a lot from us, and I think let's give them a clap. So can stand, I say, Patsavi and the Reverend, they are representing the Bazi community. Can you stand up for it, please? And the Reverend, we have been trying to analyze gender and forestry resources. And since then, the concept was expanded. But since then, the number of women have increased. But they are not enough. If you go in the field, you find that women are still few in the forest sector. And we have to increase them. Because, especially at the community level, women have a lot to contribute to forestry knowledge. I think the women know the forest more than the men. If you ask the men, the trees, the herbs, useful shrubs in the forest, I think very few men can name more than 10. The issue is adoptive. You keep learning, adjusting, keep learning. So we are going to see to hear from Alice how that methodology works and why is it good. And for people in forestry, I think we have been struggling with the collaborative forestry management, and it hasn't worked very well. Maybe if we incorporated that adaptive component, maybe the collaborative forestry management would significantly improve in its performance. So that's why we are here, basically to feedback, to tell you what we have been doing the last 5 years, and this methodology, this was continuing, so do we institutionalize it over the whole country so that it becomes a standard procedure when you are adopting collaborative forest management in Uganda. So that is why we are here, and I'm sure by the time you will leave, you have learned quite a lot about the project. We have a number of our outputs in your envelope. Some of them are already on the web. Some of them we are going to hear and see. But please read the documents which are in your envelope, because they are the government agency, and they have funded that continuously for almost 6 years. And this project on gender is supposed to end this month. So we are actually in the last the new districts, but we also try to go to Masidi and Busia to kind of scale out of the project, and for that reason, from the beginning, and we continue to give us support in the local governments, because without local governments, we cannot do much in the forest sector, especially in this place. So,
okay. So, and what point that this is a research and development project. So many of us who are practitioners will be asking ourselves, want to practice or not? So thank you very much, Dr. Banana, for that those opening remarks. Now may I invite then Concepta. Yes, Concepta, since you are the main partner, you may want to say a few words, and also invite Alice.
Thank you very much. The Forest Sector Support Division, the Ministry itself, NFA, NGOs, and the academia. We need support from everybody.
I don't know whether many of us know about association of, some of you cannot see me, are able to help us implement and see that we address gender gaps or inequalities that can exist.
Good. Now, I think we can invite Madam Razalika to...
Because Makerere University was already working in these areas, so they identified some of these problems which were there. Starting with the gender specific, there were weak rights for women regarding tree planting. There was little or no involvement of women in forestry or tree decision making. And also the women lacked confidence. And there was little to no women in leadership. At community level, there were about 5 communities do not have registered forest user groups, because we are working with 6 communities. But we found out that like Embassy and others, we just mobilized them and sensitized them about the importance of forming forest user groups. Then there was lack of involvement in forest decision making, because the community members thought that these forests belong to government or NFA, whatever. So they thought they had nothing to do with decision making regarding these forests. Then there was also poor relationship between communities and forest agencies. The communities were looking at the forest agencies as enemies, and I think even the forest agencies were looking at the communities as, I think people would need to know what to do. I'm not sure, but that relationship was there. Okay? There was capacity building for the SMT. There was a training of trainers working
of forest with girls. Right? Long ago in 1974, the first person to come to Makerere for forestry, maybe even in Africa, the first female to say, I'm going to do forestry. She must have been very brave. We had a class of, by then our classes were very good. We are like 20 people and 27 years, and the Ugandans were like 12. The others were non-Ugandans. So we are with her all those years. And by then it was forestry. So because we sleep in the dongo most of the time, and we had no special room for her. So you can imagine the challenges she faced. When we graduated, she was, I think, the third best. So she had to get a scholarship and go to British Columbia. So immediately she got a master's in genetics, something very difficult also too. And she came back, and she has always been a starter. I think now you see the Twisted Center Namave. I think that was your project. So from a small project it started, it has matured into a big national project. So she's just the right person to be here to open up this workshop on gender, because she broke the barriers which existed in the forest. And she just gave an example. I think today our students are almost half-half we have almost equal number of girls and equal number of boys. So without you leading the way, I think the gender gap would have even bigger. And now she has served for her years. She has retired, but not tired as so say. She's still very strong, still involved in forestry. I think Tina Forest is a member of the board. And I'm sure there are other, it is the vice president of the Uganda Forest Association. So she has a lot of shoes. As a lady, I think let's give her a big clap. Remarks for this workshop.
Everybody, protocol observed. I'm glad to be here, but I should say first and foremost, please excuse me for coming late. I had another activity that was running ahead of this. That's where I got delayed. But I'm glad I'm here. To take off from where Professor Banana's introduction stopped. It was very interesting taking forestry. As he says, it was a class of 27 with only one girl.
A beautiful girl.
It was very interesting. You can't imagine being alone and having the comfort of leaning on the 26 boys. We were so close. We really worked like a family. Going out in the field, as he says, there was no room. In some places there was 1 or 2 bathrooms and we had to share that. So it was quite interesting and cozy. And of course, like one of our late teachers, lecturers, Dr. Luma, made their lives very, very, very comfortable. But I think we should move away from that. Opening up gender. I want to welcome, I'm not welcoming you, I'm only opening. Yeah, I have had an opportunity of sitting on this committee of this project, the gender project, and I have watched, participated in a number of things that are taking place. I want to congratulate, today we are looking at the arm of Makerere. I want to congratulate Makerere for having come this far with your project. And looking at what was going on in the field, as it says, I started working in 1977. It's when we graduated and went out into the field. By the way, we are in the same class as Prof. So, working in 77 in the field, it was a challenge because I was always alone. And I could see a few years after, some people graduated. I don't think I should cite their names, but they came into work and they were like, no, they couldn't stand, you know, the kind of, well, how can I put it? Maybe I should say, I went to a gender workshop one time. Again, that was during my formative years. And in this workshop, we were told that it is not deliberate, but naturally, when one is changing, say you look at a poor society and someone is trying to pull out of a poor society, there will always be forces pulling down that person. People don't intend to pull that person down, but it is natural. Come back to the community, come back to the community. So, getting into the man's world, working in the man's world, there were challenges. But after working for a few years and attending this workshop, I came to learn that, yes, nobody meant, you know, what they did. But it's like, I'll give you an example. At one point, we had to go for a meeting in Entebbe. our headquarters were in Entebbe and we were sitting in Nakao. We agreed on the time of departure, and everybody went back to his and I went back to my desk, waiting for the hour. The hour came, my colleagues had already taken off. So I had to find other means of getting to Entebbe. I got there just like I'm getting in here. The meeting is in progress. Commissioner was, why are you late? What? They left me. I don't know why they left me. They may not have intended it, and probably they didn't even remember. You know? Because, and this I have seen, even when you go out, but now it is changing. So there is a need for this kind of study, this kind of research to try and balance gender. So I'm glad you have done it, and I think being out in the field, I have really seen women participating. And given what I used to see way back, women are coming up to take up activities which originally were thought to be men. And the moment that two men and women come together, I can assure you, we are going to achieve greater success. We are going to have a much bigger output. And as you know, forestry is a very unique activity. Not many people understand it. And maybe foresters, I know that at one point we really tried to say, can we open up? How can we talk to our policy makers so that they learn and they do what? We cannot do it alone, given that there are limited forest reserves and the bulk of the forest are in the private hands. This is when we came out, simplifying the language, to one extent that I think we are also bringing down the use of hardwoods and softwoods, because people were looking at softwoods, it's just an anatomical structure, but they were looking at it as if it is a weaker wood. It is not weak in terms of strength, but that was based on the anatomy of that of those conifers. So such language, we are trying to see how to pull it out of use and what should we put back. To one extent that I think until today, we have some policy makers who can come up and say, forestry is so simple. You know, we don't need foresters. Who can't do forestry? I have planted an acre. I have planted so much, right? But of course, they've been saying that until they have run into a number of problems like fires, diseases. Then they realize that, hey, someone needs to look at these fires. Did we have these fires before? What are we supposed to do? So, forestry is very important. It is a unique field. It is very important that we can, you know, embrace it, taking care of the gender. And as we very well know that ladies in particular, they are the primary, you know, people who are handling the roles and what of the families. And where we are, forests are also important in that today, herbal medicine, actually not only today, all along, it has been overriding the tablets. You find that 90% of the population depends on herbal medicine. And when you go to the forests, given the diversity of given the biodiversity, the diversity of the biodiversity, we need all that for medicine. And in fact, at one time, I think we were saying that forestry we could actually be urging, trying to tell our policy makers, financiers, how important forestry is, using the clinical approach. Using clinical approach, that this is where we can handle a good number of population. It might help so that we get a little bit of more money than what we are getting, because I think until today we are still looked at as people who don't need that much money. Otherwise, this should have been the primary core. If you want agriculture, forestry is the one you need to fund. And I'm also glad to see that actually in Ministry of Water, the donors have been pushing the water component to take up the forestry aspect because they realize the importance. And they are also pushing this component of gender, taking care of gender. I hope this, not that I hope, actually government has been pushing gender in all its activities. So, I want to congratulate Makerere for having put up this. I have seen what is being done. Me, I think it's a good one, and I want you to continue on the same. I have listened a bit of the debate. I'm glad I've noted I think the CFM and the collaborative adaptive, please push it, you know, let's take it up. And I have also noted that much as the CFM appears to be more static, but it is also collaborating with the adaptive where they are in the field. So this is very good. It is going to be healthy for our forests. Having come late and having not had a prepared speech, members, you will excuse me, but I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to see all of you attentive. I'm sure, given the the coming, this to officially open this workshop and wish you fruitful days.
Yeah, thank you very much. Inspiring words, but also breaking. I liked the phrase which Dr. Banana used, breaking through the barriers. You broke through the barriers and then the rest followed.
Yes, I'm happy that I'm not the only one late. Because as I came in, I had somebody apologizing for coming late. So I would say very few words. As you said, I had the Department of Forestry here, but also for the next 2 weeks, I will be acting as the dean for our school here. So I think I lead the home here. So I deserve to welcome you here, and you feel at home. I would want to think that everybody who is here is at least working on some forestry aspect. So while you're out there on forestry, we are in here for forestry. So we are one, but in different places. But when we are one like this, I think we shall move forward and make sure that we improve on the forestry sector in the country. I see the theme as addressing a gap. I believe there is a gap, and I hope it has been addressed to some extent. And I would want to believe that we shall celebrate at the end. Professor Banana, I think we shall not get frustrated that you have not bridged the gap in the work. So let's see that the gap is getting narrower. As Makerere, I think our minds and hands are open to any work that improves the forestry sector, particularly training, research, and dissemination. Those are our core active university, and I'm happy to see that we are coming together, and hopefully at the end of it we shall send out a very strong message. let me stop here. We can interact on a one-to-one and make contributions where necessary. I promise not to subtract anything from the contributions. Thank you.
Third phase of the project, which has more or less just started, if I could say. The previous phases of the project were implemented directly by the Ministry of Water and Environment, but the third phase of the project is currently being implemented by the Food and Agriculture Organization. So the project is now more under the FAO. I'm glad to be here.
Good everyone. Good morning. I'm Mutes Rachel, and I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development in the Department of Gender and Women Affairs.
In Mpigi, we are in Budumba sub-county, and the village is called Imbazi, where she comes from. Then in Butambala, it is in Gombe Town Council. Because it is a town council, it has a lot of forest. And the village is in Chinga. In Masaka, we have two villages. One is in Kuunga sub-county, and the village is called Makerere, next to... okay, I'll talk about that. Then another one is Chenamkaka sub-county, and the village is called Kagologolo. Then in Rakai, one is in Kagamba sub-county, and the village is called Kizira, where that one is coming from. And the other one is also in Rakai Town Council, and the village is called Kajoki. Now, the last two villages are the ones I talked about, that on the map, it is a central forest reserve, but on the ground, there is nothing called a forest. It's not a forest. And all the others are next to central forest reserve. Now, I'm sorry to refer you to the infographic in your file. It has a figure on page 3. On page 3. Page 3. The loose infographic. The loose infographic is like this.
Okay. So we can put the figure in the slides.
On page 3 we have the framework of the SCM implementation. It is showing okay, on page 2 we have the SBS. We have the framework of SCM implementation, where we have the initial conditions, how they through the process, and this was explained by Alice, and access over forests. And the indicators, we said, one of them was the types of forest products harvested by men and by women. And of course, they have also come into having some commercial products which they want from the forest, because they do a lot of craft material, but mainly for commercial purposes. And okay, back process not from the forest, but trees on the farmland. Then, and women who are needing those men's products, like you want poles for construction or for a support for your passion fruits, and you want to make crops on a commercial basis, then you may have to pay a man to go and harvest them for you. Yeah, when there are too many, of course, when you have to harvest a lot, then most of the women pay the men to go and harvest. Now, another indicator was number of women and number of men who own trees on their farmlands and the central forest reserves. The result is 98% of all group members in the study areas own trees either on their farms or their allocated forest reserves or in both areas. They have become, they joined late in the groups, so they were not able to get allocations in the central forest reserve where to plant trees. So that is one result. Another indicator, we looked at the number of trees and species types owned by women and by men, either on their farms or in the Central Forest Reserve. And that table there shows the numbers in 2014 and the numbers in 2015. And you can see, if you look at the various species, you can see that eucalyptus is such a popular tree with both men and women. Now, if you can notice, when it comes to eucalyptus, in 2014, the women owned about 6,193. But the numbers have grown up to 6,490. 6,400. They have just increased by about 300. However, for men, you can see how they have increased. From 19,000 to about 38,000. And of course, the reason is obvious. They own the land. For the women, they have to ask for permission to plant the eucalyptus, apart from the area which is equally distributed in the Central Forest Reserve. But for these ones, they have to get permission. They don't have much rights over land, but the men have a lot of rights. And many youth have even joined the groups. So this has made the number decrease by. Presently, there are even more than that. So those are the other species and the totals. Now, another indicator we had is the number of women and men who have planted the priority tree species on their farms and the survival rates. Presently, some of the group members have harvested and sold eucalyptus. Okay, that is an explanation as the most popular tree species. Because some have planted and harvested and have reasons they give. It's a fast growing, giving benefits quickly. It has multiple products, firewood, poles of all sizes. Okay, those ones we know, and it's medicinal. They use it for medicine. It's highly demanded. Market is available for seeds, seedlings, and it's multiple other products. Now, someone was asking some of the income generating activities, which the side income generating activities which people are engaged in. One of them which is doing well are the roadside tree nursery in those areas. They have small ones, but they get some money. They make small ones by the road, and it is very good for women because it doesn't occupy much land, and the water which it takes is not much. But at the end of the season, they tell you, I got 140,000, and to us this is very little money, but to them, that is good money. 140,000, something like that. Then someone says, I got 300,000 from selling those, seedlings from those roadside tree nurseries. The seeds easily germinate and seedlings are easily managed. So approximately 49 women and 60 men have planted eucalyptus. And the survival rate, I'm sorry I didn't put it here, but it's about 70 to 80%. Because they look after them very well. They really try to see that because they are trees. And they know they are going to get what? Cash. So those are some of the photos with ladies in the eucalyptus, their woodlots, and the youth, of course, and even men. Now, another thing we wanted to look at was women's access to and control over forests or tree benefit or income. Now we are looking at the indicator of number of women controlling incomes and benefits from forests or trees. Now, after 5 years or so, we have seen that most of the women have control over domestic benefits from trees, such as fruits. They also can sell and make decisions about the benefits from the sales. When they sell about timber tree benefits, out of the 173 women, only 49 have planted eucalyptus. Some have already said that. And out of those, seven by the time we did this study, 7 had started harvesting. And 4 women claim to have benefited fully from the sale of eucalyptus products. The 3 say they have used the poles to construct home structures such as chicken houses. But they say that, they tell you that we start with my husband and we made this decision to do that. But those who have sold have said they benefit. Actually, out of them, I will be able to benefit, and those others who have sold are happy about it. Now, come to Ficus natalensis, Mutuba tree. You know, in central the region of Uganda, Ficus natalensis is sort of a sacred tree. Okay, until very recently. And planting that ficus in central region sort of shows that you are the owner of what? Of the land. I see your Mutuba. If you are made to achieve, say, a clan of a clan, back syndrome, they plant a what? Ficus for you. So it was not very easy for women to plant trees. However, after a lot of sensitization, you know, some men allowed the women, some of the women to plant ficus on their lands. And 51 out of the 173 women have planted ficus. So far, out of those who have planted, we found 2 who have sold, who have been able, you know, to harvest the back cloth and sell and benefit economically. But there are some others who still cannot plant. First of all, some of them, this is their attitude, the women themselves. That how can I plant as if I own the land? But others, the women stand, how can this woman start plant to here? But we believe that slowly by slowly, because ficus here in the rural area there is a very good tree. I think you know it, that you can integrate it with other crops. You can get fodder, you can get firewood, and then the back cloth, very economically viable in the rural areas. And I think it will be for sometimes here in the central region of Uganda. People, you know, the Moko has to go with the back cloth when somebody is dead. You know, traditional functions, and it's now expensive. So if women can, you know, get that, however, we need really the men to be with us. For example, in this case, the man owns the land, allows the woman to plant, you can see. That's a ficus belonging to a woman, she has several. It is the men who still have the skill to make it into the background. And then the woman can be happy when she sells the what? The background. So we really need the men. We cannot do without them. Now another which we wanted to look at was women's participation and influence in decision making. Now the indicator was the number of women and men attending group activities. And we found out that by the end, average membership was 51, it had grown up, I told you, about 40. But because of the results, the groups are what? The numbers are growing to 51, about 23 men and 28 women. Average attendance per activity is about 26, about 10 men and 16 women. But attendance is always based on village saving meeting days, because of course there's something to get immediately. Another indicator was number of women and men contributing actively to discussions. And this we used to do when we would attend activities, whether meetings or whatever. We would try to see how active women are, how many are putting up their hands, and we looked at it before and after. Before, when we had just gone into the areas, women were very shy. Most of them were very shy. You would have one talkative woman who would almost talk for everybody, always like that. But the others would talk either through her or make, you know, mamas behind there. Not much. Hardly would they put up their hands to talk. But now we have found that the contributions are almost balancing. When you have 17 contributions from men and 14, for us we say that's a success. From almost 0. So in a meeting you sit, in an activity you see women contributing, they can talk. So considering attendance and contribution, women have become more confident and active in group activities. Number of women and men in leadership positions and their specific positions. That one we have. So the total number on the executives in all the 3 groups is about 67. We have 31 men, 36 women. And 3 of the groups are led by women. Now they are the chairpersons, and really they are doing very well. Now they also take other positions. The position which is really difficult to take is in the elections, those past elections. So those are, I think there were 18 in the total project area. I think 2 went through. But the fact that they were able to, our video has not come out, but it shows the one who says, no, I didn't go through, but at least next time, people have known me. Make it a bit shorter, because people lose interest on the way. So those others, the ones you see down here, are the linkages which have been formed. Some already told us that some, we encouraged them, we went as go-between, but others, they did it themselves. We are surprised by Bazi when they linked to visit Rubaga Rotary Club. It's not Rotary, but the spelling is funny. Always, Alice tells me that the spelling is wrong, but you know when she doesn't show it, I leave it like that. But they have made a linkage with the Rubaga Rotary, and what have they given you? Water harvesting, they have and base meal, and then internet, an internet center. So they always just say it's Wikipedia. Uganda Wikipedia, whatever it is. So those are some of the linkages. We cannot do them ourselves, but because of the linkages, it's just, that's sustainability. And we are encouraging even other groups to make friends like that. Even the local government, there's a lot of benefits at the local government level. A lot. And once they tap into that, they get a lot. But sometimes they sit back and ignore it. Yet the things are there. Conflict resolution is another. And of course, several conflicts have occurred, but good enough they were trained, and they are able to resolve most of the conflicts by themselves, within themselves. Maybe one of the conflicts was, which was very disruptive until the police had to join, was the eucalyptus one, which was in Butambala. When the people who didn't like eucalyptus came and slashed people's eucalyptus in the Central Forest Reserve, and they also went to the group's tree nursery where there were eucalyptus seedlings. They destroyed them all, and they also had one member, of course, had about I think 300 eucalyptus planted. They cut them. That was really a big conflict. The police had to be called, but most of the others are resolved within themselves. They know what to do. Now, achievements. SCM has enhanced women participation in forest management. More women now are in decision-making. Benefit sharing, it's on the right track. We can't say that really it is, we are there, but at least you can see something. Because if they give out seedlings and the man and the woman get, the women may not have land where to plant, but they have, they have the opportunity even to sell them to others. I think that is on the way. SCM is encouraging collaborative problem solving. We have seen that. SCM has created linkages between participants and external actors. And women confidence has increased as evidenced by SCM group members having contested in political positions and in the primaries. Because the info is already on the internet. So you can download it. So you can see what the process we have gone through, how we found on the other side. Now, some platform for women to speak. It may not be very easy because there are some people who are new. And those cultural, like my in-law is here, so I cannot talk. But now, yes, there is respect, but somehow it does not bar them from talking. Then there's a mixed groups encouraging participation. I've told you already that we don't work with women only, but we work with men because we need each other. Yeah? There are some cases where men are needed. There are some cases where women are more needed. So we work together to balance that and to share that synergy. So for us, we encourage mixed groups, and I think they have worked. And also, there's a suspicion. What do those women do there? What do they tell them? Eh? Are they telling them to take over or what? So, but now with the men present, they know exactly what they do. Women were motivated by facilitators. I've already talked about that. Adoption of women's contributions, that also encouraged them. Even however simple it may be, we try to see how, you don't discourage them. So we have used that trick to encourage them to talk. They may come up with a contribution like, we should water the nurseries in tons, things like that. Or we should go to 2 by 2. Then of course they discuss about it, and instead of saying, that is nonsense. When you say that, even us at this level, when you stand up to talk and people pull you down, I don't know how many will come up again to talk, but that also encourages them to be more confident. There are concrete results. They can easily see the appearance produce honey, but in Central Region here we have not been very happy with the production, but there's honey. We want to get such as to help us to see what is happening, why the appearance in that those regions don't produce much. So we collaborate. Then CFM has done a lot because the women who did not have land are able to plant trees in the Central Forest Reserve, and already some are benefiting. And of course the tree nurseries. Those are quick results which you can see. Then the village banking introduction, that was really good because even others who think that forests take long, there's this quick benefit in it. Village banking, so they continue participating in the activities. And the women who did not have access to correlatos, for loans, now they can join the village banks, get small loans, start small businesses, ranging from kabaragala making. They make kabaragala, they come and sell when they are meetings, and they get some money, just like that. And some have big businesses, they have bought cows, and so on. Then, facilitators are what for about groups or individuals who dominate to mitigate. Then, of course, the main support and allocation of land, women for planting preferred species, that was also another. And leadership training enhanced women's confidence. I talked about that. Challenges. We still have the cultural barriers. We have already talked about some trees cannot be planted by women. There's weak women rights over land and trees, that still persists. There's the lengthy CFM processes. Fiona, we've talked about that several times. NFA focusing on investors, leaving out the communities. That is another. Then the women law education levels limit decision making. Sometimes some of them, of course, refuse the positions. We don't take up that. Then, of course, there's theft and malice, especially with the tree seedlings. Some others don't want to come and work, and then they just steal the seedlings. And some others destroying. Then, of course, the slow adoption levels. You'll find that where we have households who are in the SCM groups, the livelihoods have improved a lot. People are boasting about, assets they have acquired through the village banking, through the sale of trees, and so on. However, you find the neighbor who cannot even adapt from this. That is still a challenge. When someone says things are good and the neighbor remains as it is. They first want to join the group, then take on the activities. It is quite slow. Conclusion. SCM facilitation has resulted in solid gains for women's equality in forest use and management, as well as broader livelihood outcomes and gains to forest sustainability. SCM seems to provide a promising pathway for achieving meaningful gender inclusion in forestry, which is male-dominated and tenure, but also for achieving joint livelihoods and resource sustainability outcomes. Thanks. Those are women being trained in grafting, and some of them are already making income, producing grafted trees. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Concepta, for that presentation of experiences. We are obviously seeing good strides in terms of, I can call it, women empowerment in those areas. But now let's have Jimmy Bishop to come and make that presentation so that we can discuss them at once. In fact,
gender is a problem. In government, we know 30% is an indicator that is women. And I think this project is kind of starting that process of developing indicators.
The paper, the role of adaptive collaborative management, and addressing gender gap. These people for SCM have been in the villages with the organizations, training them, working with them for the last 5 years. So for us, we went there and tried to look at what has been happening using figures. That is introduction, participation, has long been viewed by important scholars, and as a crucial element in recording poor and marginalized groups, they exert greater influence over institutions. In recent years, there have been increasing academic and policy interest in the role of gender participation in forest management. Evidence has already been demonstrated here about women's involvement in forest management, and even giving us the gains. Despite the above, women continue to be eliminated from forestry decisions, as we are going to see. So my objective, and other objectives which are not here, is to determine effects of adaptive collaborative management in addressing the gender gap in the community of forestry in Uganda. The study was carried out in 5 districts of central Uganda, and the reason why it was in central Uganda is because SCM activities have been implemented. The sites, study sites, which we call treatment. We will be using treatment quite often, but here treatment means where SCM activities have been taking place. For measuring purposes, we had also to look for controlled villages where there are no SCM activities, such that we see what is happening in controlled villages where no SCM, and treatment villages where there are SCM activities. This is the study area. We were in districts of Mbiji, and in Mbiji we had 2 villages, Mbazi, where SCM activities are, and Katebo, where no SCM activities. Then we went to Tambara district, the community of Njinga, where there are SCM activities, and Chiziko, where no SCM activities. In Masaka, we were in Bukeri, where SCM activities, Chambazi, 1.8% against 38.2% of men in treated areas. Decision making, we had also 30 respondents male at 41% in treated areas, and 43 respondents in local council meetings. 11 male in treatment, 68.8%, 5 female, totaling 31.2%. Male.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Funa Peter from School of Women and Gender Studies. My major interest, or I have expertise in the gender, forest resource management and utilization, more especially in the context of climate change. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Irene Kambenda. I work with the Forestry Sector Support Department, a department under the Ministry of Water and Environment. My agenda focal point for the ENR, that is the Environment and Natural Resources Sector.
I'm called Barbara Nakangu. I'm a PhD fellow at the Makerere Institute of Social Research. I'm particularly interested in issues of governance, natural resource governance. And there is where the gender interests lie also. The representation of women, how effective can it be? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Adeline Mohebwa, and I am a gender development consultant, mainly in institutional building, institutional structures, but I'm also the chairperson of Association of Uganda Professional Women in Agriculture.
Having this panel discussion, as you will see on your program, is really trying to find how can we reduce the gender gap in forestry, and then there are some policy and practice recommendations that we can have so that we, in terms of reducing that gender gap. Generally, that's what we are dealing with in this discussion, and I think it's also the core of the project. What we'll do is I'll be asking a couple of questions of these people so that they can say something, but then after that we'll open to everybody to make their comments. I'm not saying ask them questions, but make their comments based on what they are saying, and then we will proceed along those lines. But also remember always that there is also another panelist concept here who presented the experiences and whose paper is about to come out in a reputable journal, and there is Jimmy Mshoborozi who presented all these numbers which are mind-boggling. So those are also there. Remember that they are part of this. The question that is here is, how do NGOs handle gender mainstreaming? How do NGOs do it? And what can we learn from it? So that will come. Then my good lady from FSSD, how is the forestry sector handling gender issues? So these are out there in the field and they are doing things. How are they doing things? So FSSD is, how is the forestry sector handling the gender issues? And what can we learn from there? Are there successes? Are there challenges? And the rest. Then from my friend, I think this will be one question. You know, from Barbara and Peter here, the question we would like to, well, let's have two questions. One, I know Barbara, you worked in forestry, with forestry for some time, and you are continuing with this gender thing, I mean with this governance and gender in your PhD program. So the question to think about is, we heard that there is a recognition generally that increased participation of women results in better forest management, and yet they continue to be marginalized, if I can use that word. So the thing is, why is that so, if we are seeing benefits like that? And my friend from the School of Gender, you know, this gender advocacy for advocacy for gender equality or gender balancing, whatever word you may want to use. And we kept hearing in this project. It normally quickly degenerates into a discussion of men versus women. This versus that. Is that what it is all about? And what we need here is not really what people have defined as gender. What we want in practice out there is really out there in the field, in those villages. Is it men versus women? Is that what is gender in practice? And so those will be probably the questions you will want to answer, all of you, and see what you think. Again, it is arising from what we heard from the presentation. Someone made a statement that women are better managers than men. And we are not talking forest only, we are talking across the spectrum of management of community affairs and government affairs and all that. So what do you think about that? I will just give 2 minutes for each one of you to say something about that before we can go to the other.
Okay, in my perception is that this statement is too generalized, because when you look at natural resource management, when you look at management principles guiding the management of resources, women and men have different spheres of management of natural resources to meet their gender roles. Society allocates different gender roles to people, to men and women. However, you may find that the researcher who is making this statement is that could have looked at a sphere where women dominate, and then puts into context that women are better managers of natural resources than men. Men also have their different spheres where they manage, and both men and women will manage these natural resources depending on their gender roles and what that resource is supposed to meet to address their need, either in productive, reproductive, or community needs. Basically, that is in my thinking.
Okay. Yes, Barbara, what do you think?
I think I want to elaborate what Peter just said. I think echoed in a way where there's a kind of emphasis on, it should be women who should do this, rather than focusing on the relationship between the men and women, how they handle the resources differently. So I think the argument that women are better managers is because the women's roles are usually nurturing, and they aim at sustaining the natural resources. I mean, the forest is more for food, all these products of, accessible food, herbal medicine, etc. They look in a home, there are that usually nurture, the family, provide for it, make sure there is food, make sure they are healthy, make sure they are. And a man usually, many times, the men look at forest products as income, let's, not always, but cut down the trees for charcoal, we need timber, we need what. So it's kind of, more or less destructive. So, but it's also for a different role, okay? They're looking for income, they're looking to build a house, they're looking for. So I think that's why there's that saying that probably women will be more, better managers of resources than men, because the broad range of roles that they use those products for, encourage them to sustain them.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, mine would be mainly that it's a gender things that people keep saying, whether there is evidence, whether there is no evidence, but it's a saying. And of late, there is actually a very strong component of reducing these gender stereotypes, because there is need for evidence-based, like what he has shared from the survey they did. you will find that in a different maybe locality, this is happening, and the other one is not happening. And I'll also give an example of decision making. Like, for example, if you consider the forestry sector, decision making, who decides on what to cut down, which tree to cut down? That will not make me a better manager because I don't have the ownership of the tree. Because I don't have the ownership of the tree, I cannot make decisions to cut on the tree, so I will not be able to cut the tree down. So it is very important to do gender analysis, for example, to understand why are they saying women are better managers. And because of the why, you'll be able to understand now the reason why they are referred to as better managers.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll also concur with the previous speakers because why they use the natural resources for is different from what men use the natural resources for. Men are harvesting for basically income, and women normally are harvesting for household use, domestic use. They are looking for firewood for household use, and when men go to the forests, they are looking for firewood for commercial. They are looking for poles to sell. They are looking for timber to sell, which is different with the women.
Okay, that's good. So what we are hearing here is that really
there's a gender coordinating team or a department, then that will be the one handling the gender issues. And what guides this unit is basically either the gender policy or the gender strategy, or even guidelines. Gender guidelines can guide the coordination of whatever is going to happen during for the gender agenda. And the biggest challenge here is the budgeting for that gender unit, because oftentimes there is no resources, it's not budgeted for, or even the person who is put there is not availed training to understand or to know the current trends of what is happening in the world, in the gender world. So that is one strategy that they use. They try to institutionalize gender, but also they also use the platforms. For example, giving from the presentations, you realize that if they give the women a voice where they are able to share, a voice where they are able to network and link with one another, that voice will transform into self-empowerment for the women. They also use the gender working group. At the lower levels, some of these are called gender champions. These are people who are trained and believe in changing mindsets of the local people, or of the lower people, the people they work with, and they do capacity building. They help peer training one another, trying to change their mindsets so that they begin thinking in a different way from what they used to think. But also, we realize that there's a lot of need for capacity development and sensitization. In as much as we've seen the differences between no SEM and where there is SEM, you realize that the disparities are big. Where whatever has been achieved, there's at least progress towards closing the gender gap. So if we did a lot of sensitization and capacity development, we would be able to help that. But it cannot come along. We also need specific interventions to enable the women be able to come up, because initially the women are not in groups. Initially the women are scared about, or their agency is very low. So there is need for additional specific women-specific interventions which will bring them on board so that they are able to comfortably then relate and be able to be leaders and be able to manage with their counterparts, the male. And lastly, there are different approaches to gender mainstreaming. Currently, there is a gender transformative approach that is called Gender Action Learning Systems. It also does the visioning, where it promotes joint visioning and planning, which could be adopted for better forestry management and reducing the gender gap in forestry. Thank you.
Good. That sounds like it's.
SSD, we have a gender strategy. Actually, the gender strategy is new. We have an ENR gender strategy, the Environment and Natural Resources Gender Strategy. This is under the ministry, but FSSD also participated in coming up with this gender strategy, which stipulates what we are meant to do to ensure that we bridge the gender gap. This strategy is still new, and it was funded by the UNDP, but as usual, at times funding is really minimal to execute the activities. Other activities that we are doing for all the projects under the department, we have strategies. For example, when we had FAMICA, we had a strategy of 33% women involved. Whether it was training, we were encouraging that if also whoever was implemented to involve at least 33% women in the meetings, in decision making, in benefits sharing. For example, if we were distributing 2 seedlings, then women will always have to be brought on board. The same is under the Red Plus project, where we have also a strategy to involve the women and other people, so that everybody is really involved. For lessons learned, we saw it with FAMICA phase 1, that really women were brought on board with the various trainings. Women were able to gain confidence, to speak in the meetings, to air out their views, and even to plant the 3 seedlings that were given to them. Yeah, I think that is that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, as I told you before, is that things don't just happen, there are reasons why they happen. So when we talk of division between men and women, is that they are guiding principles which tell us the way natural resources are divided along the gender line. And our major emphasis in gender to come out to address gender issues is that it must be based on gender analysis, and use gender analysis as a gender tool for coming out or giving you insights of the needs of the men and women which we are going to address. Like for instance, I've said both men and women belong to different spheres. Like for instance, we are talking of, in terms of women being based in the domestic needs, isn't it? So we define that as a subsistence sphere. And then we talk of men being mainly in the commercial basis, isn't it? So we define that as a commercial, a market sphere. So in that regard, we have, let me give you about 3 principles. One, if you are analyzing the use of forest resources, one is that both men and women use different resources to meet their gender roles in the forest sector. So it will depend on their gender needs and their gender roles. The second is that there is a gender division of labor and resources. Which resources, in other words, if there is a gender division of resources, then there is a different access and different control on resources. So it will depend on the gender need for that resource. In other words, you are trying to say that resources are socially constructed. So you might look at firewood for cooking at home, isn't it? But man might look at firewood for money, but it will end up going to cook by a woman. But at that moment of collecting the firewood, it was being gendered. Then the other principle is that there is no uniformity in the use of forest resources. It has to be differentiated by gender. So those are some of the guiding principles in forest resource management. Now, the major question why people at times degenerate to women being marginalized is inadequate gender analysis of their information. And for this morning also, that why we are not coming up to the exact point where we want, isn't it? We are not addressing a specified gender issue in our project. We are just addressing a gender gap, of which a gender gap, it is by accident. If we discover it, it will be there. If we don't, if we have not discovered it, it's not there. So if we had a gender issue to address, and we are conceptualizing it along a gender line, and then we find a theorization to inform our investigation, then we shall be there. Failure to do that, then we shall not be there. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. And now,
thank you. The question before you said the recognition of increased participation, and now we are saying underrepresentation.
Well,
there are two key things that usually mix up, I think, for me. And that is one key aspect. And I think, like she has mentioned, a lot has been done, as we know. A lot has been done about increasing gender, integrating or mainstreaming gender in our policies. Structures have been created. I think Uganda has been uploaded about most of the policies and structures that we have. Parliament. I mean, what she was saying about ENR, making sure that women are on, for example, CFM groups have to have women there. Local governments have to have quota for women, etc., etc. I think the challenge for us right now is substantive. Women are participating, but they're not participating substantively on one hand. Then two, where they are not very well represented. So we are participating, women are participating in the parliament, they're participating in these forums, but they are not representing their friends. They are there. I think most of the time it's more symbolic. So you count the numbers, the women who are there, but are they representing the issues for these fellow women? I think for me that's one of the key issues. I'm a strong believer in decentralization. This country has a structure that will allow women to effectively participate. I think at the higher levels we are doing fairly well. The biggest challenge is at the lowest level. Now, and that's why we are muddling through. So most of the things my colleague here said, we are trying so many things that for me, I think sometimes we confuse and undermine some structures that are there. I said I'm a strong believer in the local governments, local decentralization. The local government is a very important structure for this country, really, because it enables us to come from the top to get to the lowest level. But that's where you find women who are just participating and not representing. And the main challenge goes to the capacity, the power. Either we have gender officers there, we have these committees, but they don't, I think one of the reasons why the project did so well was because they went in with funds and capacity, and they were sitting with these women and empowering them and saying, this is what you need to do, okay? Now when that capacity is not there at the local level, then we start seeing, I think for me, we start seeing challenges. So we have more participation and less representation, substantive representation. Then two, some of these policies that we do, like my Peter said, we generalize some of them. And we think they're the best. Sometimes we want the women. We forget that sometimes you can walk through men to get to the women. That is the representation I'm talking about. So it's not that the women has to be there. Some cultures won't allow everyone to be there. But actually you can convince a man, you can talk to work through the men, through structures to get the women's issues addressed. I think that is another issue. Usually we emphasize the women, the numbers, the what, when actually it's the issues we should be emphasizing that should be addressed, So for example, we are emphasizing things like property rights right now. It's a key issue. Women should have rights over their land. Women should have, And yet, I've been in the north, the project was even in Lamu, and I found that actually the customary ownership, which many times we actually generalize and think culture is bad. We need to analyze what is bad in the culture and work on those that are good. Now in the north, the land is owned customary. When a widow, a woman, it's just from her home and she goes back home, she has access to the family land. When it becomes private property, it will become another matter. Who will own that land? Just like to be the man, okay? So some of these policies, what we do, sometimes we generalize them, and yet it's quite hard for government to have piecemeal policies. I think that's one of the challenges, but sometimes we generalize them and then generalize issues, gender issues. Yeah, so it's a big topic, but for me, I think the biggest challenge is effective representation of the gender issues, in addition or more than just the participation. I think that's what is key.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Barbara. And now I think let's open it to members.
Talking about women and men. So who is the best to advocate for that? Mwako will be the best. Land use. The men are doing this and the women are doing that. Who will do it better and so forth. Now, when I look about, when we talk about empowerment, we are saying men have more power than women. It says, let me go in politics and before go home. So, what we are saying, let us sensibly concentrate on what will benefit, cost-benefit analysis. When you pay for this, how are you going to benefit elsewhere? The forests we are talking about, the cost-benefit analysis we have seen. Clear the forest, climate change. Now we are in shambles, we have a problem. So where we are focusing now is something good. And I thank those people who really came out with this idea. I don't want to waste so much time, but one thing I have not, where I would ask a question, is food security. We are going for forestry, but then we have competition for land. Plant eucalyptus. We know environmentally what it does. It dries the land. So we want the trees, but we are destroying the land. The question, which tree is best for what area? We have our, Mr. Chewuso is there, agroforestry, Nafoli. Who can give us the best tree to plant for what area? Now, when you take eucalyptus in the dry corridor, and Rakai, that area is part of the dry corridor, you see now they cut down all the trees. Even if we plant, what you are planting is more destructive than perhaps, I'm not saying that is, but perhaps it may be more destructive. So all these things, that's why now I'm waving up. That's why we need the terminology, other things being equal.
Okay, thank you very much.
One issue is about definitions. I think we need to, in the write-ups, we need to come out with a definition of community forestry vis-a-vis community forests. We need to get the difference. Then number two, the definition of gender. I think what we have been emphasizing and what I've been hearing is man, woman. But there are those youth which are much more vulnerable and the elderly which are more vulnerable than the women. And even when we look at the households, those old households are much more stable than the young households. Have we taken care of that one in our definition? Because I think one study I did in the Mount Elgon, the most destruction is being done by the young households and by the youth. But the women who are solid in their homes, they are much more stable. And then the third definition is about the tenure security or tenure rights. We also need to really go into it. Which kind of household have more tenure security and tenure rights? Which categories, whether they are women or men. There are even some men who are very vulnerable, by the way. Yeah? So it's not a question of saying man, woman. Yeah. And then the other issue I wanted to raise is the question of decision making. Decision making, I think we should really be making decisions on facts. And for example, I've seen in the presentation that business have been introduced to the communities, to the women groups and whatever. Do you have business plans with discounted cash flows? You get it? You know, whatever little thing you do, have a simple business plan that shows the cost and the benefit and the opportunity cost as you put it. Because sometimes we may want to encourage people to go into a business, but if you do the income and the outgo is how somebody one time calls in the village. Now, what is the income and what is the outgo? Expense is outgo. So, what is it that is coming up? Steve, I'm about to close. And then the most important thing is also changing people's mindset. And you know, with me, I believe in changing people's mindset by using economics and probably how technology can make you cut very few trees and still achieve maybe the certain required output. So maybe these are some of the things that we should really focus on when we are dealing with the gender issues and security of 10 years and whatever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to add on the definitions that CD has indicated. Gender gap. What is it? Is it that if there is less participation by women than men, then there is a gap in gender? Or it is something else? I did get it clearly during the presentations. Two, I think the issue of gender came up somewhat late, maybe during my time when I was joining the university as a student. I started hearing it much, much more. In the past, probably it wasn't so, but still we had a very strong culture. I have a feeling that this gender move now somehow is having some collusion with our culture. Now, which way do we go? Should we consider some of these cultural things outdated so that the modern gender issues take over? How do we balance the two? My third issue is gender versus professionalism. We are talking about women being better managers of natural resources in general. Where are we leaving professionalism? Is there any link between professionalism and gender? If there is a trained man who is a real forester, is supposed to manage Budongo, and we say, no, but women are better managers, let this lady go there. Are we achieving better natural resource management? That's what is boggling my mind as well. There was some presentation on decision making, and I saw a very good that I think there that at the household level where there is community forest management, women were much more involved in participation in decision making. And one of them was at household level. Now what I'm trying to think about is, do we look at this decision making and participation of women vis-a-vis stability of the household, whether being now or in time to come? Has there been some findings to that effect? I would probably get more worried if I hear now that one of the respondents was my wife. Well, she now makes more decisions in my house than so I don't know if something was looked into that. I think I will stop there for now.
SCM and CFM vis-a-vis the commercial, the Mugaga, the investor. Because there is where Concepta said that there is where they found that an investor had totally enclosed the place. Why are we putting gender where there is that investor business? Post President would also contribute to that. How are you treating it in these SPJs? Can we as a community with our gender issues come in and apply for some grant? Can you grant trees? Because I've gone to, especially if you go to look at Mavira, I've gone to Karagara where the investor, the Mugaga, has closed. If you go to Nandaji, the place has been given out to Mugaga, and the communities are just small squatters. But also there are CFM areas where this SEM can work. How do we reconcile, especially the resource manager? You said 1 minute, we stop there.
And the lady Justin?
Keeping. Because you are saying that women were telling you they have sold so much, they have got so much, but did you train women on record keeping? I think CD also talked about the business planning. So did you do some training for women so that they can be able to record, to take, to document their achievements and what they have got out of being involved in the SEM, so that at the end of the day, you can go back and ask them and they show you, this is what we did, this is what we sold, this is how much we got, and this is the benefit out of this SEM. Then on the women being better managers than men, I think as the professor said, we need a level ground, because you can't, that is a general statement without looking at the baseline. What are you talking about? If it is roles for women, they are better managers. But if it is roles for men, they might not be better managers than men. So we need a level ground, we need statistics, we need data to be able to come up with that conclusion. Thank you.
As government, we encourage sectors to come up with their gender strategies on how to mainstream gender in their programming. And right now, at the moment, we did the review of the Uganda gender policy and evaluation. So now we are looking at revising it so that we come up with a new policy. So I'm calling upon Madam Conceptor. I heard Professor Banana saying that issues of forestry were not captured in the gender policy. Maybe you can make a case so that we capture an indicator in the revised policy. So the other thing what I wanted to talk about is about, gender issues need a lot of sensitization and capacity building. And if someone has not been sensitized about the gender issues, they'll never appreciate what gender issues are. So I think that's what I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you. I think I just have one question to Conceptor and team. It's just
the gentleman here.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you the panel. I'm happy that we have absorbed the notion that women are the best managers. Also told her that I would probably manage the energy better. I would not probably warm the food longer than she does because she's waiting for me to come back home. So literally, that doesn't really say that you are a better manager because your role is different from the other party. Then, I also get very disappointed when normally the best case studies of gender are involving the participation of more women than men. For example, starting from the panel. We are having the panel with 3. And that is what it is. When you go to the Ministry of Gender, I don't know what it is, I won't allege, but normally where I want to say that this organization, for instance, is a reference point for good gender, probably balancing and all that. We find 80% of women and 20% of men. So my advice or my personal insight into it is that let's harness the tradition, the good practices that we've always had as the culture, as responsibility of men and women, and then bring the perspective of empowerment into it. 1 minute is done.
Okay.
By concept, I learned from you that actually mixed groups encourage participation. Traditionally, we have been encouraged to separate the groups, that if you want to get the best out of ladies, you have to separate them from men so that they are able to participate. Now, I don't know which one is the right thing to do. Then the other thing about women being better managers, I think, or not, I think this is, we are looking at this at two levels. Is it at public service or is it at domestic? If it is at domestic, ladies are actually better managers because they don't have access to resources. It's the men who actually give permission for the trees to be cut, or they cut themselves. I have a life experience where we identified the trees in the field. We went to a house road and the man had moved away to another home. He had left that home. They were very good shady trees and we identified them. And we gave the lady some facilitation. But when the man learned that actually his wife had gotten some money, and this he did through his brother whom we had also done the same, he came back and cut down the trees. So, this is actually access to resources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally,
there have been talked of gender issues, and then gender gap. What is the difference between the two? If someone talks of a gender issue and a gender gap.
Precise. That's I like that one.
Think
just in 2 minutes.
I will just be very precise. Record keeping, of course, we as facilitators, we answer the needs of the what? We try to encourage them to solve their own problems. Like when it came to record keeping, they saw there was a necessity for that. And then we linked them to, yes, sometimes for women to open up, they need to be alone. And that we have been doing it sometimes. But when it comes to everyday, work, I think it's better we work as mixed groups. Because the men have their advantages and the women have their advantages. So that's how we found that it's more successful to work as mixed groups. But when it comes to intricate issues, then we would separate the men and women. Gender issues and gender gaps, I think Professor, we try to, I thought about a simple one, like the numbers, that is a gender gap. But when it comes to women not getting pads, that is a gender issue. So something like that, but I think...
One, I want to start with the issue. 1 minute will not be enough. One, I want to start with the issue of tenure. Or the tenure of trees is different from the tenure of other properties. Because a tree is a multi-product property. One, you might own, when you look at a tree, and major issues which govern tenure of a tree is access and control. You might access products from the tree and when you don't own it, or when you don't control it. You might control the product and you don't control the tree. So that is what makes the tenure of a tree very complicated. So, depending on your gender roles, the tenure of the benefits from a tree will vary depending on the gender. Then the two is that when you are doing a gender analysis concerning forest or any other natural resources, there are 4 guiding principles. One, you might use guiding gender relations. One, you might use the resource to complement each other. So you don't need to make, each one takes a different decision. This resource could be used for coexistence. You use the tree, you use the product, and I use the product, but no one cares about it or does not affect any other person. Or we might use this resource in a competitive way. If we are all harvesting firewood for the household use or for there will be a way of it will affect the resource. And then this resource might be used in a conflicting terms. So in other words, when you are doing your gender analysis, those things should be put into consideration. Then basically what we are trying to say is that, many things have been said, isn't it? We should stop putting ourselves in a structured way that this men benefit more than the other, or women use better this than this, isn't it? From a post-modern perspective, isn't it? We are saying there is no universal truth. There is no universal truth. It depends on how the forest resource is constructed. Like she's telling us that women are not allowed to plant trees. I mean, a ficus, isn't it? Or to own a ficus. But in the same Uganda, I've seen whereby women are supposed to plant a ficus, because if you have just settled and plant a ficus, it means you are transferring wilderness from the wilderness to domestication. So the rituals you have performed in the wilderness will be performed in their domestic space. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much, Peter. Then we go to the next.
A lot has been said, but I picked out one part, is the security of tree tenure. When a woman plants trees, she's planting on land. I'm talking about the married woman who is planting the trees on the husband's land. Yeah. After some time, when the trees have matured, I'm looking at the end product of the trees. Who will harvest? And how much is the woman getting? Well, I encountered this when I was one time working with the communities. And the women, the wives would always be like, really, how can I plant on land which is not mine? It is quite really hard. So some of them would not plant because the land wasn't theirs. And then they would be like, at the end of it all, or after some years, this man may decide to bring in another woman, and they'll have to go away. So who remains with the trees? How do I benefit? Really, it is still quite a hard thing, and I really don't. I thank SCM for what they've done, but I think we still have to do something about the trees planted by the woman. Or we need to help the women somewhere, somehow, to see that they at least benefit more from these trees that they have planted on the man's land.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to re-echo Professor Mwaka's comment, right? From where sometimes you have to work through others to enable them where they cannot have that power. Representation is really key for me. And as we work, especially NGOs, some of us, let's look at structures that will allow better representation of women's issues. Enable women to decide for themselves. But why you see that it's not possible, when you combine with the gender analysis and make sure the issues come up and they are represented on their behalf. Many times when we go to work at the local level, we create committees just like you created in these groups. But sometimes you may lead to conflict with the wider community because we're working with a smaller group, and then there's a larger group that is missing out, okay? And that affects representation. Can we use those smaller groups to actually improve performance of like local governments to do better? For me, really, that's the message. That's the best way we can advance women's issues.
Thank you. Yeah, and mine is package. For example, we've looked at issues of time poverty, where women have little time, and you are asking them much more of their time to go and participate in the forestry. So we really need to see how we package all this that we are giving to these communities, so that we are not reducing on their time, but providing alternatives. For example, use technology. If I'm looking at these women, maybe I'm saving them from collecting water, I will get water harvesting technology. I'll get labor saving improved cook stoves, so that they can use less of that energy and be able to use the time they would have spent going to look for firewood, going to look for water, to productive activities. But also, I also learned that research is very important, so that we do not say things that are not really coming out of our backgrounds, our culture, but we have evidence that is leading us to conclusions, so that we are able to exactly intervene in specific areas which they require. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in some differentiation, rather than women and men only. And I'm remembering the things which CD brought about young families and children and things like that. So we need to do that. The second one is empower women. And Barbara did emphasize better representation, and especially for the local, for the very local person. She said, currently we are muddling through, just trying to see what we can do. But this project is beginning to put some sense into structured arrangements of how to go about it instead of keeping muddling through. The other one is work through men. There is somebody who said work through men, I think it was Steve Barbara, where cultural practices, where cultural values are very strong. You could still go through men to reach the women, to reach their children, to reach their mothers, and that kind of thing. The other one is the thing of record keeping and business planning, and that should, I think, come as part of the indicators, so that you know what you are doing actually. Are these people benefiting or not? And then gender strategies, I think what I picked is that we ought to continue with them. They are already being done, but we ought to continue with them with good policy analysis before you draw the gender strategies and see how they can be implemented. There were issues raised about implementation. So there is still a gap. How do we implement these very good policies and get good results? Sensitization was mentioned, that people need to be sensitized to know, and that comes with those other definitions which people said need to be clear. And yes, we did, also the other one was work synergistically. Like the issue of what Concepta kept saying, that we can't do everything, but where we discover a need, link with some other people so that you can achieve the whole which the community wants. So synergistically is important. And then tree tenure for planted trees, people have consistently said it's complicated, and its sustainability so far is not yet, we cannot really, especially for tree planting, we don't know if these trees planted will belong to the men when they are ready, I mean to the women, when they are ready for harvesting in 15 years' time. So we need to watch that space and see how it goes. And then something the Prof said, beware as we promote these gender issues or gender, whatever it is, that was also a question, beware of creating instability in families. And that goes with the cultural, values and that kind of thing. And then finally to make sure that the project results are sustained, Concepta did say we need to institutionalize them within the local governments so that they become part and parcel of the things they can budget for, part and parcel of the things that can constitute their annual work plans. I think those are the things I could quickly pick out as we talked. And so I would like...
We are really grateful. And to all participants, I think you were, excited beyond words, because we have heard a lot from you, and all of them have been very educative, very good advice, very good add-ons. Okay, and I think the team will benefit so much from this discussion, and the findings are going to go up to SIFO, so SIFO will be quite happy with this outcome of the workshop. Thank you very much for coming. Once again, I would like to thank our communities who have been part and parcel of this for almost 6 years. Our board members, I think, can you stand up for some?
I should first start by thanking the project team, because it is you that has made us to be here. And apparently you have made a success story. And for this I would like to thank you so much. My word of thanks also for to Sita and the group. If you have any other group, Avila, I think is the one represented here and you're leading. I think you have done a very tremendous job. Professor Manna has made just one of it. But to me, I would add the timekeeping aspect. Some of us came late, but you have kind of brought us into perspective and kept to time. And I think we shall not leave very late after this meeting. And I would want to think that your experience is playing a great role in this kind of facilitation. And we may not have to look very far as long as you are still around. So thank you so much for that. To the participants, I think I woke up this morning thinking that I would have a dead day. Actually, when he called me in the morning, I thought I would not make it at all. But I felt so energized when I came here. I hardly had a sleep because I came back home around 2 to 3, traveling a long distance. But here the participation was so lively, and to me I was largely learning. And I think this is the spirit that we should expect of participants. And that's why the word is participation, or you being a participant, not an observer. And we live, I think, to our true meaning of participants. And I would like to thank everybody for this. Now, when I come to the real issue here, gender gap, I would want to note that there seems to be a lot moving into that direction. There are a lot of successes, but also some ambiguity that need to be clarified. And also I think not everybody seems to know what this is about, including myself. So I would urge those who are in that domain to reach out to many of us so that we get to know. But particularly in terms of natural resource management, I think this probably is, in terms of your Ugandan situation, probably this is one of the projects that has gone very far into reaching out to the people there, making sure that they bring on board the gender issues with some successes. And I think we should look forward to this kind of projects. And more so, I think we need more participation probably from various stakeholders, so that we get to see that we bring the gender issue as it is, probably not just women and men issue only, so that we see some positive changes. That's what I could pick from the discussions that we have had here this morning. Now, as Makerere, I think our participation in this kind of project, I would want to think that it will continue. Not just only for forestry, but we have a whole gender department, women and gender department there. I hope it will remain women and gender for long. Maybe I have a feeling that maybe in a century to come, the men will start rising up that they're threatened, and we'll start having maybe gender and men studies. Because the society is dynamic. Okay? So for now, let's push on this. The point I'm making is that Makerere, as it is, has mainstreamed this into our activities and our structures here. But for us as forestry, we are really in it as well, as you have seen from the project. So we remain, as politicians always say, very committed, okay, in participating in this, in gender issues. And I look forward to more participation, especially from my department and of course the university as well. And in so doing, we shall be always ready to host this kind of meeting. And I think this should not be the first, and should not be the last, in terms of meeting to discuss crucial findings as has been demonstrated in this project. With these many words, I think I can say what was expected of me, that the meeting is officially closed.
So lunch is on the corridor, you can eat the food and maybe come and eat anywhere you want. And then after that, I like to do some explaining. I have to ask to the meeting in the corner, so I have to give almost everything.
I think it is within the program practice.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.